Welcome back to another episode of AFL by Jellyman here on Thursday the 25th of May. Looking back at round 10 briefly, but looking forward to obviously the stats and round 11, as well as some takeaways from round 10. Standings update, a quick team by team review, whereabouts they're currently at, whereabouts they're pushing forward into bye weeks, etc, etc. But cracking straight into it. Looking back at last Friday, Port Adelaide beating Melbourne 80-76. We actually turned this one off at three-quarter time, thinking, Melbourne looks steadily in front, about 3 goals in front, about 17 points in front with Grundy kicking that goal on the siren, giving them the shush. But Port Adelaide obviously fought their way back into it and deserved the win in the end. They were just stronger across the field. They were harder inside, just a lot better in the wet. And Melbourne, there seems to be some glaring deficiencies in their game, just how hard they are at the ball, and also them away from home and away from the MCG. Unlike that sort of 2020 season where they had 2021 seasons, they had also away from home, and they're just not as strong as they were travelling at the moment. Next game of the fixture, Sydney beating North Melbourne 93-90 with that controversial but fair interchange rule coming into play. Sydney getting a free kick pretty much right in front of the sticks, kicking the goal through and ended up winning. It's one North Melbourne should have won. But one positive thing for North Melbourne is obviously them being in this game with the sort of turbulent week they've had with Alistair Clarkson stepping out and Brett Ratton coming in as coach. But a lot of the young blokes stepped up in this one. They had a lot of changes, so it was good to see them come together. For Sydney, worrying signs there. Still obviously quite a lot of players out at the moment, but they've still got a lot of good players in and just not being able to get that good of a win against North and pretty much almost lose it. We'd probably chalk that one down as a loss for them. Western Bulldogs versus Adelaide at Mars Stadium. This one didn't go how we thought it would. We thought Adelaide would travel right to Mars like they did last year, but just wasn't the case. The Dogs were too strong through the midfield. 11-19 to 5-10, 85 to 40. Not too much else to cover off in that one. The Fremantle Dockers beating Geelong in Perth. We tipped this one, so 106 to 77. Main reason being is Geelong have got a lot of outs at the moment and they just don't have the depth to cover it. And Fremantle on a bit of a run. They've found how to score as well as backing that up with defence. And then their midfield's playing really well. So look for them to continue to climb up. They've obviously got Melbourne this week, but that'll be an interesting contest. And it should be a tight, high-scoring contest depending on the weather. Brisbane versus Gold Coast. This one was tight until about three-quarter time, and then Brisbane just blew it out towards the back end, 107 to 64. We missed it by 1 point total over-under, unfortunately, but that's what it is. And Brisbane just keeping on against the Gold Coast Suns, but then also this season as well. Haven't blown anyone's socks off as of yet, but just performing as they need to perform. And then Essendon finally beating Richmond after 13 matches, 71 to 70. The Tigers looked like they should have had this one all wrapped up by 3 goals. Essendon forced their way back into it and ended up getting the win through Durham kicking obviously that ceiling goal, marking in front of Rioli there in the goal square. Sunday's games, Hawthorn versus West Coast. Unfortunately, Mitch Lewis beat West Coast off his own boot. 142 for the Hawks, 26 for the Eagles, 22-10 to 4-2. Not too much else to go into this other than the Hawks just dominated, and there was a first game player by Weddell, he had 28 and 2. And that shouldn't really be happening in your first game, but against the Eagles, I guess it's possible this season. Carlton versus Collingwood. Collingwood were always in charge of this one, 85 to 57, 13-7 to 7-15. So the Blues had their chances in this one, but couldn't convert. Collingwood just too good at the end. Carlton obviously, it's not dire straits to them as of yet, as they showed a bit, and they were able to score. It was just a matter of putting that score on the scoreboard. Last game of the round, the Giants versus the Saints. The Saints winning 92 to 80 up there at Giant Stadium. Very similar to what it has been the last 3 seasons for them, for each of these squads. GWS sort of leading early, but then St Kilda forced their way back into it and ended up getting a win there. Standings update, so ladder update. We've got Pies, Brizzy and Port all up the top there on win streaks. Then Melbourne in 4th. St Kilda 5th, win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. Win-loss, win-loss, win. Western Bulldogs in 6th, Geelong 7th and Adelaide 8th. Just outside the 8 is Essendon Fremantle. We think Fremantle are one of those squads that could jump up in there. Then Carlton 11th, Sydney 12th, Gold Coast 13th, Richmond 14th, GWS 15th, Hawthorn 16th, North 17th, and the West Coast Eagles 18th. Both North and Eagles are on losing streaks. Same as the Giants, they've actually lost their last 3 as well. And also the Blues have lost their last 3. The Dockers have won their last 3. And then the Doggies are also on a win streak, along with, as already mentioned, the Power, Lions and Collingwood. Jumping into the next topic, so preview and stats for the upcoming weekend. So looking at Friday night's game, Sydney versus Carlton, a big game for both sides. The lineups aren't out as of yet. History between these squads: Sydney beat them up there in round 1, but that was actually prior to the season. So not really counting that one. But looking back to last season in round 10. The Blues won 102-87. I believe that one was the MCG. And then the season prior, in round 11, the Swans beat them up at the SCG 100-78. This one is at the SCG again. We like the Blues to get a win in this one. It just means more to them. Depending on the team lineups, we'll wait till they come out. But we do like the Blues. Some stats here. Warner, 25 plus in his last 4 games. Parker, 25 plus in his last 4 games. Papley, 1+ goal in 9 of 10 games. McLean, 1+ goal in his last 4. Walsh, 25 plus in his 6 games. Cerra, 20 plus in 9 of 10 games. Curnow, 2+ goals in 9 of 10 games. And Owies, 1+ goal in his last 5 games. So as mentioned, we like Carlton, and obviously combining a few of those players together, we'll put that together in the last piece for our round 11 best bets. The first game on a Saturday is at Marvel between St Kilda and Hawthorn. This one will be closer than expected. So I like, the Saints potentially 1-39 or the Hawks plus line. The Hawks been playing some good footy, haven't been really blown out of late. Obviously coming off a big win last week against the Eagles. Last season, round 20, 75-63 to the Saints. But back in round 4, 142-73 to the Saints as well. So a big win there. But I think this one will be closer than expected with a lot of improving signs for Hawthorn. Some stats. Sinclair, 20 plus in all 10 games, 25 plus in 8 of 10 games. Wilkie, 15 plus in 9 of 10 games. Higgins, 1+ goal in his last 8 games, 2+ goals in his last 3. Butler, 1+ goal in his last 5 games. For the Hawks, Worpel, 25 plus in his last 4. Nash, 25 plus in his last 6. Lewis, 10 goals in 4 games, obviously had a bag last game. Newcombe, 1+ goal in his last 4 games. Next game on the fixture is Melbourne versus Fremantle. So obviously the D's coming off a loss, the Dockers coming off a win. Last season in round 20 over in Perth, the D's won 85-39. Earlier in the season at the MCG, round 11, the Dockers actually won 94-56, which is quite an interesting stat. So around that same time last year, will almost be exactly the same time, round 11, the Dockers actually beat the D's there. And I think, off the top of my head, that was to break the D's winning streak as well. So a couple interesting stats in that one. And we'll just obviously note Oliver for Melbourne. So we'll see how that sort of matters. A few stats here. We'll obviously have to take Oliver out. Petracca, 25 plus in 8 of 10 games. Pickett, 1+ goal in all 8 games. Van Rooyen, 1+ goal in all 8 games. Sarong, 25 plus in 9 of 10 games. Brayshaw, 25 plus in 8 of 10 games. 30 plus in his last 4 games. Amos, 1+ goal in his last 8 games. 2+ goals in his last 3 games. And Schultz, 1+ goal in 9 of 10 games. Geelong played GWS down at GMHBA Stadium. So down there in Geelong obviously needing to bounce back as well from a loss last week. They did beat the Giants last season up there at Giant Stadium 88-35. And then the season prior in the semis, 103-68. And then in round 21 in 2021, the Giants actually won 84-65. This one, a matter of injuries as well. The line's quite hefty. Obviously being down there in Geelong. The Giants paying 605, the Cats 113. Some stats here. Stewart, 20 plus disposals in 7 of his last 8 games. Blitzas, 15 plus in his last 6 games. Cameron, 3+ goals in 7 of his last 9 games, but he's only had 1 goal in his last 2 games. So against his old squad, I reckon he kicks a bag. Broome, 1+ goal in his last 4 games, also against his old squad again. Canigado, 25 plus in all 10 games. Callahan, 20 plus in his last 4 games. Toby Green, 2+ goals in his last 5 games. And Hogan, 2+ goals in his last 6 games. Gold Coast versus Western Bulldogs. So obviously in Darwin this one. So It'll be a Gold Coast Suns home match up there in Darwin, obviously having a lot of locals from the region. Last season, round 10, the Doggies beat the Suns 106-87. Season prior in round 18, 90-79. And then the Doggies have owned this matchup 118-56 back in round 5 in 2021 as well. We'll have to wait and see what sort of teams come out in this one. Obviously up there in Darwin, at that time of night, it'll be slippery. So it'll be like a dewy, wet weather game, which does actually suit the Suns. But as we said, we'll have to sort of look a bit more in depth into it. Some stats in this one. Swallow 15 plus in his last 8 games, 20 plus in his last 3. Ballard 15 plus in his last 5 games. King 2 plus goals in his last 6 games. And Rosas, who I think will kick a goal, especially up there up north, 1 plus goal in his last 3 games. For the Doggies, Smith 30 plus in his last 3 games, taking on more of that inside-outside mid-roll, 20 plus in 7 of 8 games. Libba 25 plus in his last 5 games, 20 plus in all 9 games. Norton 1 plus goal in all 10 games, and Scott 1 plus goal in his last 5 games. West Coast versus Essendon is the next game on the fixture over there in Perth. West Coast are paying $10.50. The Dons are paying $105. West Coast actually beat the Dons in round 15 last season, 107-97. And then in round 11 in 2021, 87-71. Obviously, these sides look a lot different since then. Some stats in this one. Kelly 25 plus in his last 5 games. Sheed 25 plus in 4 of his last 6 games. 20 plus in all 4 games as well, though. His last 4 games. In all 6 games. That needs to be changed. Willardon 20 plus in his last 3 games. And Oscar Allen 2 plus goals in 9 of 10 games. Obviously breaking that streak last week. Martin 15 plus in all 10 games. Hobbs 15 plus in his last 4 games. Stringer 1 plus goal in all 8 games. And Menzies 1 plus goal in his last 4 games there. As expected, we obviously like the Dons. But we'll need to look into the teams to see, total match points over under, the weather, what that all looking like, just for that matchup, especially with the number of Eagles outs or teams that may be coming back in. Sunday's games, Richmond versus Port Adelaide. Now, obviously, caretaker coach coming in for Richmond after Dimmer retired during the week. There's the big thing about when new coaches come in, they come in to reform. The Port Adelaide Power are on a bit of a win streak, 205 to 180 in this one. Recent encounters, Tigers have owned 109 to 71 last season, round 21, 77 to 65 in round 13. Then the season prior in 2021, Port Adelaide won 79 to 77. We'll need to have a look at the team matchups for this one as well, unfortunately. But some stats here: Taranto 30 plus in 5 of his last 6 games. 25 plus in all 10 games. Rioli 20 plus in all 10 games. Martin 1 plus goal in his last 3 games. Also Clark 1 plus goal in his last 3 games. Butters 25 plus in his last 8 games. Houston 20 plus in his last 6 games. Finlayson 2 plus goals in 4 of his last 5 games. And Pal Pepper 1 plus goal in his last 8 games. Collingwood versus North Melbourne. Obviously North playing well last week. This game was actually tighter than expected last year. I recall it because it shouldn't have been. 88 to 81 in round 17. And I'm pretty sure Collingwood's line was very large, very similar to what it is. So Collingwood paying 104, North $11. Nick Dacos 25 plus in all 10 games, 30 plus in 7 of 10 games. Side bottom 20 plus in his last 6 games. Myercheck 2 plus goals in his last 4 games. Johnson 1 plus goal in his 8 games. Sheasel 25 plus in 8 of 10 games. McDonald 15 plus in all 10 games. Larkey 2 plus goals in his last 4 games. Stevenson 1 plus goal in 6 of his last 7 games. And we obviously like the Pies in this one, but I don't think it'll be that big of a margin. I'd be looking at 40 plus and maybe something like that, total points over under, depending on the weather. Last game of the round, Adelaide versus Brisbane. Brisbane back on the road to Adelaide. Adelaide coming off a poor performance playing the Doggies last week at Mars Stadium. The Lions obviously beating the Suns quite comfortably, and something they've done to the Crows recently as well. Round 9 last year, 102 to 66. Round 16 the year before, 111 to 59. And round 4 the year before, 83 to 46. The Lions are actually 172, the Crows 213. That Lions 172. I mean, we'll need to have a look at the lineups and everything like that, but that's a bit of value there on the Lions, I think. Smith 15 plus in 9 of 10 games. Rochelle 15 plus in 9 of 10 games. Rankin 1 plus goal in all 10 games. And then Pedler 1 plus goal in 6 of his last 7 games. McLean 20 plus in 7 of his last 7 games. Danaher 15 plus in 6 of his last 7 games. Hipwood 1 plus goal in his last 8 games. And Bailey 1 plus goal in his last 5 games. We'll also have the round 11 best bets on our TikTok and Instagram, so make sure you go across and follow there. But that's all for this week. Feel free, as always, to like, follow, and subscribe on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. All the best for your round 11 AFL punting.